Hey guys, welcome to The Daily Athlete. This is episode number 24. Today we're going to be focusing, so this is the last of our series for knee dysfunction. Now what we're going to be focusing on today, so we've worked on a little bit of the foot, the knee, the hip, adductors, and most of the lower body. The next part we're going to look at is actual movement. So maybe there's a problem with your movement or specific movements which are causing the issue for you to have sore knee. So maybe you have great range through your ankle, great range through your hip, you're able to smash through all those exercises with no dramas, but you're still having some sort of issue, and the issue is actually in your movement, not in your mobility or flexibility. So, what we're going to work on today, we're going to have a look at what a pelvic shift is, we're going to have a look at leg length discrepancy, creating torque, okay, and how these are affecting your movement and your training. So a pelvic shift is pretty much where we have the pelvis tilt either to the left or the right. So instead of our hips sitting nice and flat, what happens is that one will shift up, or they'll shift sideways like this. Okay, so one side of the pelvis will shift compared to the other side. Now, what this means is that this will create a functional leg length discrepancy. So there's two types of leg length discrepancy. Pretty much what that means is one leg shorter than the other. Functional discrepancy means that it's muscular. One muscle group on one side of the body is a lot tighter than what's happening on the other side for a particular reason, causing the pelvis to be pulled out of place and leaving more weight distributed on one foot than the other. An anatomical leg length discrepancy is where you're physically born, or maybe you've had a broken bone and parts of that bone have been removed, is where the bones in one leg is actually physically shorter than the other, okay? Now the reason this can cause knee pain is that if we have a pelvic shift, so just say your pelvis is up sideways, you'll notice that as one side goes up, the weight's distributed more into my toe, there's a little bit of a gap between the bottom of my foot, okay? Pretty much what that means is that more load's on one foot than it is on the other foot. Now, how does this work with your knees? When there's no load or no stability on one foot, the knee's left to do whatever it wants to do. So all I want you to do is distribute weight to one foot. You'll notice that there's no stability there on that left knee. It just does what it wants to do. This one on the right here is fairly stable because all my weight's on it. The left one is fairly loose. It moves backwards and forwards, does what it wants to do. So it doesn't allow you to keep it tracking as well as what it could be. So, couple of exercises from Kelly Starrett, from Mobility WOD, which will be able to help you out with the pelvic shift. First one we can do to help reorganize our pelvis. Lay on your back. What we're going to do is we're going to push pressure on one leg going forwards, the other leg going back. What we're going to do is we're going to resist that movement on each side, okay? So you might need to give this a little bit of a test or crack if you're a little bit uncoordinated. This leg's pulling back while I'm resisting on it. The other leg is going the opposite way, okay? So we can do that on both sides. We can hold for, say, 10 to 15 seconds on both sides, okay? And we can do that twice. That's the first one to help organize it. The second thing you can do, let me grab my foam roller. You can also do this exercise with a pillow or pretty much something which is a little bit soft, not too hard. Put our legs in between, put the foam roller in between our legs and and press on the foam roller with both our legs. So pushing together like that on the foam roller, okay? Which is also going to help to organize our pelvis into a more stable and neutral position. So that's number one. You can give both of those a crack with regards to your pelvis, so that we're trying to get those legs as equal as possible. Now, leg length discrepancy most of the time will come from postural habits during the day or some sort of injury that you've had previously from favouring one side. Maybe you work on the computer and you lean towards one side most of the day, so one side's stretched and one side's shortened. Maybe you sit in a truck during the day or the car and you lean on the window, you have one arm on an armrest. Or you've had an injury, maybe you've had a sore knee, so for a period of time your knee was really, really sore. Maybe you've had surgery, maybe you had a broken bone, sore ankle, sore hip, whatever. So you start to walk and distribute weight on one side, which means that one side starts to tighten up, one side is still working as normal. So it's hard to get out of that habit. So first thing, looking at the pelvic shift. Okay, so the next thing we've got to look at is torque and how to create torque with our hip. So the hip, like the shoulder, is a ball and socket joint. So we have our femur, which is the main bone in our leg, which runs up into our hip. So they're running like that, okay? So ball and socket. Now, around the outside is what we call the iliofemoral ligament, which helps to connect these two together. So, When we have these two connected together, so they're connected around the outside. Now, there's a little bit of a gap there, or a little bit of lack of stability, okay? Especially when we're under load. So when we're under load, we're running under high intensity weight training, whatever we're doing, we need to make sure that this is in here as tight as it can possibly be. Now, the only way to do that is to twist. So when we twist, what it actually does is tightens up that ligament and helps to pull the femur into the hip to keep it nice and tight. Now, in terms of how that affects our knee, what we're doing is we're creating stability through the hip so that our knee is able to track over our toe as best it can. Okay? If there's no torque through the hip, what will happen is the hip will be loose, so that femur will move around in the hip, which means that the knee's going to move around with it. Again, not allowing our knee to track over the toe, going to put all heap of torsion on our knee, okay, and causing stress through the knee. That's the next thing. The last thing to look at, the next dimension, is how you're loading your body when you're running, when you're weightlifting, when you're training, whatever you're doing. We need to make sure that any load is taken through the hips, taken through the posterior chain, so glutes and hamstrings, not through the knees. And the way we do that is by making sure that we load our hips up first. So I'll use a squatting demonstration for you. What we need to make sure is that when we're squatting, we're weight on our back, or it's just an air squat, is that we break at the hips first, then we bend at the knees second. Okay? So a common problem, especially with people with knee pain, is that they'll always bend with the knees first and try and squat down. So they'll try and squat down by bending, keeping upright and bending the knees up and down like that, which does all sorts of damage and not very nice things. We want to make sure that we push the hips back first, we load up the hamstrings and glutes, then we squat down and bend the knees. Okay? So the first thing to bend is the thing that will take most of the load. The thing that bends second will take the rest of the load. So we want to make sure we take all the weight through our hips and through our musculature and through a bigger joint rather than through a smaller joint, which is our knees. So there's a couple of things for you to work on and go through. So smash out, have a look at the movement stuff. If you've been through the movements in the last two episodes in terms of mobility and movement, flexibility, mobility and flexibility, I'll get it right. And you're still having some sort of issue, then we need to break it down into the movements. So write down all the movements that you're having issues with, the ones that you're having dramas with which cause pain, and then find out what you're doing wrong. Go through this video again and analyze your movement. Take a video, sit here and watch this video on your computer screen, on your iPad, on your phone, and make sure you take notes and apply that to your movement and see where you're going wrong, see what you're not doing, see where this knee is not being stacked over the toe. So there's a few things there for you to have a crack with. So comment below any questions at all. Otherwise, have a great day.